So how do you pronounce your name? Tony Rangel? Rangel or Rangel?
Rangel, yeah. Good guessing on that accent there.
Right.
Now, how do we...
Do you live alone?
No, I'm married and I'm retired now, living in Florida. And I've been retired now just about 2 years. And I have to say this retirement time has given me many more opportunities to just hang out with presence and not to allow myself to get caught up in the distractions of the work life. And it was very interesting for me to see that while I was working, work felt very real, very serious, and very important. And then 2 weeks later, when I didn't get any phone calls, I knew they were getting along just fine without me. And I recognized that what I thought had been real was just about as thin as tissue paper. But I felt it to be real, and I said, "Is it?" And I really feel for those people who are on this journey and who are still working, because that can be quite an impediment to just allowing oneself the permission to experience presence without this sense of a time clock somewhere. And so I try to watch what I say and what I write, because I can't make assumptions about people's opportunities, though I recognize everybody is on their own path. And they are never off the path. They couldn't even try if they wanted to get off the path. And so what I try to encourage is simply finding out for yourself. The guru's insight is not my insight. I would read all these books, I would spew things out, but that's not me, that's not my insight. And so I saw that there was this big movement for imitating and trying to look like them or sound like them. And I'm saying that, that's not how it works. And for me, how it works, I began to recognize language as basically metaphor, analogies, and similes. And that right there, duality was a function of language. There was the word consciousness, and then there's consciousness itself. But always, when I ever use language, I'm going to be separate and apart from what is. On the other hand, I don't have the ability to have telepathy with you, so we're going to do the best we can with words, and we tell our stories to one another. So when I am communicating with somebody, I never tell them I am telling you the truth about anything. All I can ever tell you is how it looks like, feels like, smells like to me. And I get concerned when I see wisdom teachers trying to say, no, this is the way it is. And I'm saying, thank you very much. It's the way you see it. It's how you experience it. And I like that. I like you to share that with us, because you're on the road and you see a ditch and maybe you can give me some instruction how to avoid that ditch. So for me, it took a while to understand, conceptually, intellectually understand, that is, that in absolute reality, nothing is excluded. When I look around me at the world, I recognize that is a manifestation of the universe. There's not a thing any of us has to do to manifest that truth. Now, understanding that is a completely different ballgame, because we try to understand it with our mind. And here, in this country, and maybe Western civilization, I hate to talk in generalities, I try to speak from my experience, so I try not to hide behind pronouns like it or that or suchness. No, it's me. This is how I see it, and this is what it looks like to me, and that sort of thing. And, but there is validity to what people talk about in terms of pointers. I absolutely appreciate language as pointing to the non-conceptual, which was another thing for me. To just sit with that realization that before language, absolute reality existed and does exist. Consciousness exists before there was language. So it's prior to language. And the fundamental understanding is always going to be prior to language or non-conceptual understanding. Yet, when it comes to talking to you, I have to use the words and the intellect. And so, because otherwise, when I sit with non-conceptual, what's going to happen is I'm going to sit here silent, and it's going to be very boring video. We just sit there in truth, in absolute reality, and another person's going to come along with what's going on there. They're not going to understand or appreciate that, but that's okay. It took me a while to accept. I get it, I don't get it. I have bliss, I don't have it. And one of the things that I had, one of the wisdom stories that goes out there and kind of sucked me in, was the story of abiding in consciousness always, moment to moment, breath by breath, abiding in consciousness. And yes, we're going to be living in this other world. Except this other world is very much like the ordinary world we live in. And so for me, water droplet consciousness, oceanic consciousness are the same. My ordinary consciousness that gets me out of bed in the morning and cosmic consciousness are the same. They're not separate. That's when I realized, this ordinary consciousness is enough. I don't have to get more awareness, more wisdom, more success, more this. It's already here. And then the question was, well, how come I constantly forget it? And then I go, okay, it's mine. It's mine, thinking mind, chatting away, doing its job to try to explain the world to me. And when I don't know something, I make it up. And that's how we get along. And it was really only through the practice of meditation that I began to be able to get a distance and to watch mind. Here's a thought arises, presents and falls away. Another thought presents and falls away. And I got into that, but that's an important thought. I gotta keep that thought. I gotta write that down actually somewhere to don't forget it. And then it goes. And here's another thought. Here's another teacher. Here's another satsang. Here's a pill. Here's something. Always it was something else. And it was this whole thing of awareness awakening to itself that really began to percolate with me, because formless awareness to me is manifesting in this human form. I'm not manifesting as planetary consciousness. I'm not manifested as lunar consciousness. I'm not manifested as cosmic consciousness. I'm manifested as human consciousness. Okay, so why am I always trying to transcend and leave this body behind to go to some other place? This is my window. And so, okay, let's see, what is human consciousness? I said, oh, wow, it's this. It's feeling hungry. It's feeling confused. It's being unhappy. It's, trying to get this and trying to get that. This is it. And this idea of, and I love the Buddha, because clearly suffering is like a real hard pebble in the sandal. It got his attention. How do I get rid of it? And then my thing, in a sense, is I was very much up in the mind, left hemisphere, language and reason and logic. And the right hemisphere is feelings and intuition and dreams, not really having access to the vocal cords. The left hemisphere has access to the vocal cords, so it can actually feel itself think and talk. But the then conceptual, absolute reality is totally inclusive. So suffering is not excluded. Pain is not excluded. Brutality is not excluded. Victimization is not excluded. It's the mind that wants to have gated communities, safe haven. I'll take this, but not that. That's too nasty. That's not good. And absolute reality and consciousness and the heart of, no, I gotta accept everything. And the mind, no, not that, not cancer. And that too. No, wait, not that starvation. Yeah, that too. No, there's gotta be a limit. No, there's no limit. It's unlimited. That's what unlimited is about. So it's a matter of trying to train the mind to be an ally. And I tried to do that whole thing. I'm going to quiet the mind. And of course, it just chatted away like crazy. And it was when I ignored the mind in the dream sequence, the mind was represented as a horse. The horse would run. Every time I ran after the horse, it ran away and fine. I said, that's it. I'm done with it. I'm going to sit down here. Then the horse stopped. He watched me for a while. And then the horse came closer. And I said, get out of here. Forget this quiet mind. And the horse came over to me. It quieted itself. I said, holy moly. You know? So they're right when they talk about the basis of stillness and a quiet mind. You just can't coerce it. And there is this kind of myth that if you get an insight, an epiphany, an awakening, you're going to become mentally healthy, psychologically healthy, and financially successful. No, not for me. You know, and that's sort of the dialogue I like to have, to encourage people, because when you think you know, when I thought I knew something, I stopped looking. Because I knew.
Of course.
You know, 2 and 2 is 4. And I knew the truth of impermanence. And but I kept thinking, if I knew, and that's how I knew I had these expectations, why was I always walking around dissatisfied? Because I thought it was supposed to be something different than what it actually is. And I said, it can't be this. Well, yeah, it is. It can't be that. Well, yeah, it is. It can't be that simple. Yeah, it is. So I very much enjoy listening to folks because it may be primitive language in the way we talk with one another, but it is a way we exchange information and energy. And you can exchange information and energy with somebody with a smile, with a hug, with a pat on their back. You offer them a meal if they're hungry. You offer them a roof for something to have. There is exchange of information. And what happens to me is not so much, it's like resonance, a tuning fork. The kindness in one gets the kindness in another to resonate. And much of what I go off and do is not even a realization. At some level, it's like a recognition. Of course. How did I forget that? Yes. And it's not Tony talking to Richard, but yes, it's Tony talking to Richard. It's also self talking to self. And self talks to self on this planet 24 hours, 7 days a week. Self is always talking to self. And when I look at that, but self thinks, when it looks at something else, it's another person. It's another.
When you started to talk about, these teachers, they have a perception, and sure, I can honor that perception, right? I don't have to say they're wrong or that what they say is not a truth, but it's not my truth, right? And so then actually it's like a distortion for me, or it's a damage to me, and to try to jog me out of my whatever my truth is, and jog me out of my process of connecting with that truth, and realizing, oh, this is not true. Oh, that's true. Oh, maybe it's this way. Try it on that way for a while. And my natural process, I just kind of realized that what could be more trustworthy than my natural process, and what could be more uh, mistaken to try to emulate somebody else's process. And all the questions that people want to ask you, and all the, like, who are you? I know, somehow I know what questions are mine, and if somebody has a question that they really want the answer to, I'll try to answer it. But if it's just polemic, like, I'm gonna solve you by focusing you on who are you. Well, I'm the guy that's running my process, and that feels whole in that, and I know who I am. I'm just Richard and nothing more, right? And I don't need your yearning, right? Your holy yearning that you're trying to give to me or let me inherit or something is your problem, right? And if you think you've solved it, well, then leave it. You don't need it anymore. You don't have to give it to someone else. And so, as you talked about kind of like wholeness, where everything is a part of consciousness, and to realize that even the part is the whole. But I don't even know if you have to go there, right? Because why do you have to have a whole that's wholer than your part? Because that's only a concept. Until your part gets bigger, then it's a bigger whole, or it's a bigger part. You were talking about the drop in the ocean. Consciousness is the same, right? But the ocean consciousness is just an idea. That's like a hand-me-down for somebody. So what's wrong with just being just Richard, and just having my consciousness grow and expand and include as it does, and enjoying that movement? And I'm finding that having too many precepts of a greater reality is a stress, and that stress is what fires up mind, which is what kind of like takes me away from being fully in this space that I inhabit. In other words, somebody hands me a concept, a grand concept, and says, you could be like this too. Naturally, my thoughts get real busy to try to figure out, well, I don't know, that sounds good. How can I get there? And if I just say to myself, no, I don't need it. I don't need another benchmark, or another one more parameter to make a judgment about myself. Then I can feel pretty good just the way I am. And I don't know. It's if you really start to look at our lives, we have a whole lot of belief structures, right? And we live in a society so that we do similar things, right? And so then we do similar things by emulating each other, or copying each other, or imitating each other. From when we're very young, we imitate the kids in school. But even when we're on the job, we just imitate the rhythm of work that other people do. and their methodology, and we try to take on a company culture, and so we have this belief that we can learn by people talking to us and telling us another way to behave and another way to think. And I guess that works, because I mean, there's universities, there's thousands and thousands of schools, there's our whole society is kind of built on conforming to principles, right? And in a way, that works. And so then we've applied the same thing to how we feel about ourselves, right? Which is more introspective or more subjective. And we've said, even on a subjective level, we could share my subjectivity. I could share with to you, and you could compare your subjectivity or how you feel about yourself to how I'm telling you I feel about myself, and maybe you could get over there, because I'm doing better than you, right? For some reason, I got a bigger happiness factor, or I have a bigger satisfaction factor, or I'm claiming that I live in a peace and that I'm not striving for anything, but yet I'm trying to get you to strive for something. So then, I don't know. I mean, I guess schooling works, right? Because we've all done plenty of it. I guess we've done on-the-job training, so that works. And I guess sometimes consciousness transforms. Some people are transformed, right? But let's use the metaphor of health, right? Let's say I'm ill for many reasons, right? There's many stresses, many toxins, many dysfunctions in my body. And it's all created from who knows what exactly, it's got to be stress. So then I go to a healer and he says, oh, you can need an energy healing. I'll push energy in here and make it flow through, and I'll touch your meridians and so on, and then you need some better elimination, so I'll give you a cleanse, and then you need some better nutrition, so I'll give you some vitamins, and things get better for a while. But whatever it was that created that situation in your body is still active, and it recreates it after you leave that healer and you go back and you're the same way again, right? So I mean, whatever created your consciousness or your expression of consciousness, your system of worries, or the pressures and tensions you inherited from your family or your country or your religion or whatever, maybe they're still operating. It's kind of a mystery, like that somebody just gives you a couple of meditation techniques and you get transformed. You don't get transformed. You feel great while you're in the retreat, while you're on the Vipassana cushion. When you get off, it doesn't last, right? You're back, whatever created you, who you were, you're back in your own process, right? And what I heard you saying was that somehow there's something holy about each one of our processes, We're all individuals and we're all here for our own reasons, is to evolve in our own process. And teachings that put people back into their process and make them responsible of their own process and make them honor their own process and somehow be satisfied with their own process, centered in it, right? Those are wonderful teachings, and teachings that pull you out of your own process and say, emulate me, follow me. You can be like me too. I don't know. I've just kind of decided they're kind of rotten, and in a way, I don't know what I've come to. I'm a deprogrammer, because I just want to help people just understand when to leave, right? To leave that old teaching, that teaching that you recite to yourself, that teaching that is part and parcel of your self-talk.
We are born into a family, into a body, into a culture, into a time, and that process creates roles for us. So I'm a father and I'm a son and I'm an employee and we act all that stuff out. And somewhere along the line, something happens. You hear that? That's a cat, my cat.
Noisy
Somewhere
critter.
along the line, something happens to make you stop and question. So for a while, I worked very hard to become somebody. Now I am working very hard to deconstruct in a way and become nobody.
Now, wait a second, like almost that's the same thing, You were going to try to become somebody, now you're trying to become nobody. Just be Tony, period. Forget the nobody, forget the somebody. How about that?
Well, that works because that ultimately, the somebody and the nobody both go away. But it seems to me there may be shortcuts, and I've always been looking for shortcuts. I've never wanted to pay full price. And so there's got to be, this guru is going to get me there like this, and this is going to happen like that. And there are no shortcuts. And the universe kind of says, as long as you don't learn this lesson, Tony, whatever the lesson is.
No. Wait a minute. I'm going to stop you there because, like so many of our paths are built on faulty assumptions. Because I've just been thinking about like there's such a really where do we get anything, right? We claim that we had experiences that are ours, and we in other words we adopt experiences, but where did we get them? When we were kids, like you said, you were born in a family, you had your necessities, people acted in a certain way, they had certain tensions. Those tensions to you were neutral ground. That was total relax, but it was really a hypertension compared to another family, right? You said there are no shortcuts, and so I'm just illustrating. That our whole movement of who we are is built on a collective that is like a mass of faulty assumptions. And when we see those assumptions for what they are, one at a time, or whenever, how many ever we see, and we say, God, that's not true, but I've been living my life on the basis of that. And when that thing drops away, that is an immense shortcut. And when you are trying to resolve something based on a false cause, man, that's a long way around the barn. That's really a long way. And so I would say there's all kinds of shortcuts, just open your eyes.
A large part of who we think we are is beyond our physiological control. Our heartbeat, the chemical changes in our body, microscopic little changes in cellular activities in our bodies. So
a lot of those things are controllable, not they're not controllable like you have a needle valve or a dial. But if you think thoughts that there's fear, like there's a risk right here, that this guy's going to get you, your heart will start beating faster, right? And if you think thoughts that, no, he's okay, and actually I love that guy, and I love him for his own foibles, because I used to have them too, or whatever, then your heart will go down, right? And the same with the chemicals, right? Because if, chemicals stimulate good feeling and bad feeling and anxiety. And if you kind of control your thoughts, control just means look at them and realize they're not real and let them go, right? And don't give them meaning. You're controlling those things. I'm not so sure exactly why I said that, because I'm not trying to say that you're in control, but I think we can do a lot more than we say we can do, right? Okay, like I'll go back to what I said and your response to it. You said, okay, some assumption is faulty, but something else comes in. Well, it's true, because every assumption is built on an underlying foundation of assumptions, right? And so then when one goes off, then the next one is there too, right? But somehow it can simplify, and If one assumption is that there's a reality and that there's a thoughtless reality, I'll just call it. I'm not so sure if that's how I want to say it, but, and that when I have thoughts, I don't know that reality. I only have my interpret my little small wedge of interpretation. And that story right there is anxiety producing because I don't know reality, right? But it's the fundamental part of all spirituality, that there's a wholeness, right? And we could get closer to it, and that our duty or our destiny is to expand into that wholeness. And then people claim that they live in thoughtless awareness, and that they are the wholeness, right? Yeah, but yet they look just like me, they act just like me, they got a personality just, that's always been them, that you can spot a mile away, and they got all their likes and dislikes, and they operate the way they always operated, basically, with their unconscious conditioning, controlling all the strings. And yet they're claiming they live somewhere else, and that they're a thoughtless awareness, and they're a total being, and awakened, enlightened, realized, and all that stuff. And maybe many things they've put aside, maybe many of all the assumptions they've seen through, but still, as the layers get subtler and subtler, they're just like me. And so why should I try to emulate that? And only out of some dissatisfaction, right? Somebody sold me a bill of goods that I'm not good enough. I'll just say another thing. Like so many times we give a lot of pluses to yearning to expand, right? But I'm not so sure that yearning to expand is any different than disdain for what's here, right? Because we're always going towards something and away from something. So the yearning to expand, we're going actually towards some kind of nebulous concept, or something that's not us. We've never been that way, and we want to get there, right? But so it's nebulous. There's not real. It's kind of concept that's thought based. And what we're leaving actually is a true experience. It's like my life, right? And so it's really rock solid. It's just here every day, eating away at. And so I think most of that holy yearning is just an unholy disdain, and it's a definition of my life is the shits, right? And so I don't honor it whatsoever. I think it's awful.
Well, it's interesting, this idea. Well, ideas are simply that, ideas, and okay, they have whatever value we give to them. But the idea of perfection was always an interesting concept for me, because it was something to be measured against. It was an ideal measurement. Until I realized everything in itself, as itself, is perfect. And you are a perfect Richard Miller. No one else is going to be as perfect a Richard Miller as you are, and I am a perfect Tony. And the fact that Tony thinks he wants to be calmer, more blissful, more, so he feels he's like a confused neurotic, well then I'm a perfect Tony, totally neurotic and confused. There's no expectation that perfection is equanimity or bliss or calmness in the face of horrendous things that may or may not happen. Our perfection is in our every living, breathing reaction and action. And it's simply because we think it's supposed to be something else that we don't see it, that I don't see it. And so seeing an assumption for what it is can feel really quite good. But each one of us, I believe, has to see that for ourselves. And a guru or a teacher, someone else telling you what it's like. Well, thank you very much. That's good for you. Doesn't do a thing for me. And I have problems with that. And where I can, for me, each one of us in form is a walking, talking, breathing point of view. And we are like a pinhole. And there was some wisdom teacher said, you know, when I look through a pinhole and I look at the sky, I can't see the entire sky. All I see is what that little pinhole allows me to see. So that's what I am. I'm a walking, talking pinhole. And all I can tell you is just what my little pinhole says. You know, now if somebody else looking through their pinhole says to me, that's the whole ball of wax, I say, I'm sorry. I'm just not buying that. My bullshit meter just went, eh. And it's possible that they feel that way, but like you said, I can make that pinhole a little bit bigger. It's just a bigger pinhole. It's never going to be as big as absolute reality. And once I understand that, and I still go through a living process of it, because for me it seems I'm going through a process of spending a lot of time learning all this different vocabulary, learning to talk about it, learning to be able to think about it. And now it's, how does it manifest in my actual life? Am I going to behave any differently now that I know than when I didn't know? And reality is very funny that way. I don't need you to understand me to be. You know, so be confused as much as you want. Reality is going to stay the way it is. It is as it is. If I get it, reality is as it is. If I don't get it, reality is as it is. So it's simply a matter of being comfortable within this embodied form. So I have moved from what I figured was transcendent awareness, which begins as abstract thinking and intellectualism, when you can remove a feeling and put it into a word. When I gave something a label, now I know something. That's schizophrenia over there. That's unhappiness over there. That's a subatomic Higgs and Biggs particle over there. That's the basic fundamental building block of matter. But those are just labels. And so it's beginning to, how is that communicated? Maybe it's not communicated in words. It's communicated in feeling, in the body. And then that's confusing for me because I guess I didn't realize I was trying to distance myself from the world by being able to intellectualize it. And to have embodied awareness brought me right back into the body, right back into aches and pains, right back into contraction, right into the stressors, right into, this cannot be spirituality. I am becoming like this. Not. This is crazy. And I realized, no, there's a physicality to spirituality. And to relax is to release and let go. Okay, that's really good. Now, how do I let go of anxiety? How do I let go of, I don't even know how I'm holding on to it. And that was part of the process of getting into the body, the embodied awareness. And this breathing through a problem was very interesting for me because I've got a problem, there's the left hemisphere, I got to figure a solution. And then I sit on the cushion and I say, keep breathing. Don't hold your breath. Keep breathing. And then something happens that very much feels like the problem falls away, or the problem evaporates. The physical circumstances remain the same, but I'm just not crazy about it anymore. I'm not making myself nuts. And I'll do this, and that'll be good enough, or it won't be. And there'll be a consequence, or there won't be a consequence. There will be a different consequence. The whole terminology about letting the world arise as it is. And, oh, yeah, I recognize. So that's what this is like. That's what that means. Just being aware and open for whatever arises.
So much wiggling and movement and striving has been put into finding a circumstance that allows for happiness and allows for fulfillment and doesn't create anxiety. But yet I never really looked into the mechanism of it to see, well, what actually is creating anxiety. And I really, nowadays, I totally believe it's a belief structure or a story or what I say, self-talk, contracts the body, right? And that contraction is a feeling that is interpreted, right? And that interpretation comes from the last time I was contracted in a similar way. And, contracted is also pain. And so then that's what I call anxiety, right?
Well, I think your commentary on self-talk is very acute, and it's right on point with what I was. It's interesting, when I'm in meditation and listening to self-talk, a lot of people talk about see mind activity. Well, I don't see mind activity, but I do hear the self-talk. And it's interesting to me that the self-talk in the head is silent. So I have the capacity in awareness to hear words that are silent, but I can hear them in my head. And self-talk is very close to autosuggestion, which is very close to self-hypnosis. And if one is not paying attention to that self-talk, that's how you create the perceptual reality I live in. If I'm not listening to my self-talk, if I keep saying my life is shitty, and this is terrible, well, I'm always going to see the glass half empty. That's my self-talk. Now, in the Western society, the Western sense of mental health, they kind of gear you towards affirmation. Well, let's change that self-talk. Every day in every way, I'm getting better and better. And that may work to a certain degree. My place is to become more and more aware of the self-talk. Good self-talk, bad self-talk, it doesn't matter to me. I just want to become aware of that self-talk. Because you're right, once you see it, and the belief structure that self-talk supports, or the assumptions that support, you can sort of say, that's not how it is. In this given moment, that's not how it is. And how it is how it's going to be. It is how it is. And so it's like our mind is this interpreting machine. We are storytellers. And that's where we get caught up by stories and caught up into it. But if we don't have to get rid of stories. There's the mystery story, the science fiction story, the awakening story, the story of events. They're great. They can be instructive and entertaining. But if somebody can hear that self-talk in their own head, I think they've gone a long way.
They've gone a long way, And when you say we don't have to have, we don't have to get rid of stories. I think that's an illusion that you can get rid of stories, because that's just another story that, hey, I'm rid of stories now. And one of the most positive things about listening to self-talk is those things that become real obvious when you hear them and say, that's not true at all. And once you let that story go, which means you create another story that's more embracing and more friendly, and that says everything is okay, right? You can feel that right away, like there's an opening of that always already contraction. We're walking always already contractions, right? And we don't know it until they let go, right? And when that lets go, you realize there's a direct link to your stories and to your stress and anxiety, right? And then there's still those other stories that are running somehow that they're not even mouthed, they're not even worded, but they're somehow under there feeling like I can't do this, I can't do that, I don't want to go there, I've already been there. I don't want to give that much of my life to that. It's a waste and a long road. Any of those stories that says this is a long tunnel, there's not much light at the end there, I don't have time to get down to the end. All those stories are running, right? And so I don't say that I'm through with that I can take all stories and really change them. But when you change one or two and you realize you start to change a few of them and you realize, whew, that's a direct connection. And you realize I can really manage. Anytime I've got an anxiety or kind of a fear or anything, distaste for what's happening or for another person or anything, actually, I can kind of look at the story I'm telling myself about that person and I can release that. And that release is not only a thought, but I can feel it. It's an opening. And so I call it an energetic shift, right? And pretty much it's not that it doesn't recreate and come back a little bit, but it also kind of releases, right? And I'll just share some things like, I don't know, for some reason, I was on some website and there was an ad for Bill Clinton Foundation. So I went on there and I just started reading all the qualifications of all the different participants of that foundation, right? Their curriculum vitae or something like that, and all these guys making big moves, right? And working for charities and, even people, even a girl that was started a restaurant in Haiti and then started to make cosmetics there using natural ingredients from Haiti. And somehow I realized I have a feeling like I'm not good enough to do that stuff, or I don't want to get back into that stuff, or I was never a very, I never went corporate, right? I never made really big, didn't connect with a lot of people or make a difference in a lot of people's life in my career path, right? And there's all these dissatisfactions in there. And I realized just by reading these things, like, oh, I'm not that guy. No, I couldn't do that. And yet I'm thinking like, oh, I would go back to work even, I've been retired for 5 years, and, I have it's a belief structure, right? That says you could just be in presence and just, well, I don't even like to use that word, you could just be really a benediction to those around you. That's a belief structure, right? And but letting go of anxiety and realizing that the story we tell ourselves and the belief structure that we sit on, which is this basically collective, you don't really have to own it, somehow is puppeting this body and the health of this body. And, you can somehow, I now have these beliefs that I can somehow get in there and pull a few strings, or kind of let go of a few strings, or I can look at the collective conditioning that I'm operating under, that runs me, and I can actually maybe write a chapter. Let me write my own chapter. I can't rewrite the whole thing, and the best thing I can think of doing is accepting it as a challenge, right? Accepting this body, accepting this health, accepting this mentality, accepting my forebears and what they did to me and what I did back to them, right? And just saying like, this is all our challenge, right? And this is what we get to work with. And then try to clip a few of those strings and see what's left, right? There's a space left, right? And it's, you could call it confusion. There's no string to lift my arm now. I got to lift it. Why should I lift it? There's all kinds of questions, right? Should I go in that direction, right? I don't have that necessity anymore because I don't have to, my family's grown up and they're got their own jobs, right? So then all those old necessities are gone. So then I have to recreate. So basically that's life, right? To recreate every moment. And well, anyhow, there's a satisfaction to it.
Well, I think maybe in spite of yourself or intentionally so, you've given yourself the ability or the opportunity to experience that space. And stories, some people look at stories and say that's just a story, which doesn't go to the fact that stories can influence people. I mean, we as human beings, I believe, are transceivers. We transmit, energy and information, and we receive it. And some of us are in transmission mode, and we're always just talking, 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 and others are simply in receiving mode, and they seem very passive. And that's always what's been interesting for me is that manifested as a human being, that means I'm not only going to be, I am this, I'm also going to do. I'm going to do something. I'm going to run, I'm going to walk, I'm going to eat, I'm going to sleep. It's doing and being at the same time. And stories can do that. The minute you get rid of one story, or letting go of the pain story, then I've got the new beginning story. There's always stories. I mean, that's just the coin of the realm. That's how we do this. And so before I was very disdainful of stories, but now some of them, you tell me a certain story and I start smiling. I feel uplifted. You tell me another story, oh my God, that's horrible. That's how the stories go. And that is life. Just giving yourself the opportunity to get this little space around you and to be able to see how you are and to accept. And that was always a tricky one when I raised that subject matter of acceptance. People thought that meant I was agreeing with whatever was going on. And no, the fact that I accept the starvation or I accept the cancer doesn't mean I approve it. I see it there. And then you act in accordance with where you are. And where you are may be you extend a helping hand, or where you are may be I turn away because I can't handle that. You respond however you respond to the circumstance, but here it is. And that's the joy, and I think you mentioned it earlier in the conversation, of those teachings or teachers that can bring you back into the process of awareness itself. Within the individual, those are the best teachers. Not in scriptures, not in books, not in sutras, but in the living, breathing of it.
Oh yeah, here's a sutra. Okay. I'll read one as long as we said it. Okay, this is a cool one. Buddha is talking to the Kalama people. Oh Kalama, it's suitable that you all should be confused in what should be confused, and you all should be doubtful in what should be doubtful. Come on, Kalama. Do not go by hearsay. Do not go by tradition. Do not go by interference. Do not go by the authority of religious texts. Do not go by speculation. Do not go by mere logic. Do not go by considering appearances. Do not go by taking delight in speculation and opinions. Do not go by seeming possibilities. Do not go by the idea that this is our respectful guru. When you know for yourself that this teaching is unwholesome, this teaching is with fault, this teaching is blamable by the wise, when accepted and practiced, if it makes you no benefits and unhappy, then let it go and give it up. When you know for yourself that this teaching is wholesome, this teaching is without fault, this teaching is praised by the wise, when accepted and practiced, it makes you benefits and happy, then take it and live by it. So he's talking to the Kalama people. So Buddhism's got nothing to teach, really. It just says, you figure it out.